"Mommy, why are they putting handcuffs on me?" That's what 9-year-old Noah asked moments before being dragged screaming from the back seat of his mother's SUV. No crime, no warning, just a black woman driving home with her child. She was slammed against the hood, her cheek bleeding. He was cuffed like a criminal, curled on a sidewalk, crying. And while they begged for help, the officers laughed. But what they didn't know, the boy's father is Elijah Brooks, former U.S. Special Forces, trained to disappear behind enemy lines, built to end wars before they start. And now, he's not waiting for justice. He's coming to get it. If that had been your family, would you have waited for the system to apologize? Because sometimes, when the law forgets who it's meant to protect, the people remind it. The sun had just begun to set, casting the last rays of light across the low-rise rooftops of Brighton Hills. Talia Brooks' old silver gray SUV rolled slowly down the boulevard near the shopping plaza, the same place she often stopped for groceries after picking up Noah from school. The 9-year-old boy sat in the back seat, hugging his backpack, cheek resting against the window. He'd had a long day at East Crest Elementary, and all he wanted was to go home, eat pizza, and finish the cartoon episode he'd left unfinished. Suddenly, a siren blared behind them, piercing, urgent. Red and blue lights flashed in the rear-view mirror like blades of light. Talia flinched, quickly turned on her signal, and pulled over. Her heart began to race, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because she knew all too well what could happen when you're a black woman pulled over by police for no reason. The patrol car door opened. 2 officers stepped out. One was tall, blonde, with a buzz cut. His badge read Brent Harlan. The other was shorter, stockier, with dark hair, Carl Dorsey. Neither smiled. Neither asked for ID. Harlan rapped hard on the window, eyes cold. "Open the door. Step out of the vehicle." Talia cracked the window slightly, trying to keep her voice calm. "Is something wrong, officer? You're showing signs of transporting illegal substances. Step out. Now." "What? That's not possible. My son is in the car." "Not gonna ask again." Before she could explain, Dorsey opened the back door and yanked Noah out like he was a sack of groceries. The boy screamed in panic. "Mom!" Talia screamed back, shoving the door open, but Harlan immediately slammed her face down on the hood. Her cheek hit the cold metal. The breath was knocked out of her as her arms were wrenched behind her. "Stop. What are you doing? I haven't done anything wrong." Harlan leaned in, his breath reeking of stale cigarettes. "Don't scream like anyone's gonna care." Noah was handcuffed. Real cuffs. He trembled, eyes wet with tears, crying out for his mom over and over. His small frame curled up on the concrete sidewalk like prey being hunted. Bystanders averted their eyes. Some pulled out their phones to record, but stayed frozen in place. Talia tried to scream louder, but her throat tightened. She knew they didn't need a reason, and no one would hold them accountable. She looked at her son one last time before being shoved into the back of the cruiser. The last breath she heard was Noah's scream. Pure terror, no words could describe. And in that moment, she understood there were no safe lines anymore. Not on the street, not in broad daylight, not even when you'd done nothing wrong. Talia was shoved into the backseat of the patrol car, wrists still cuffed, her cheeks streaked with blood from a scrape inflicted when she was slammed to the ground. The door slammed shut behind her, the sound of metal thudding like a cell door, and for a few seconds, the world outside disappeared behind a pane of tinted glass. She glanced left. Brent Harlan was rummaging through the trunk, while Carl Dorsey stood by the rear of the vehicle, back turned. Her breathing was erratic, her heart beat like a drumbeat in her ears, but her mind was crystal clear. She knew she didn't have much time, and if she let this moment slip, there might be no way back. Inside her coat pocket, her phone was still there, a small iPhone she used just for calling Elijah. The officers hadn't noticed it. She shifted her shoulder, rotating her left wrist until it nearly dislocated, her thumb nudging into the inner pocket. The phone slipped partway out. Talia clenched her teeth, leaned left, and secretly tapped the emergency button. 3 presses of the power button. Auto calling Elijah Brooks. 8 miles away, Elijah stood in his garage, hands greasy with engine oil. dismantling a faulty starter. His phone rang just as he approached the sink. He glanced at the screen. Her name lit up, but when he picked up, there was no voice on the other end. Instead, the speaker blared with the broken sobs of Noah, angry shouting for men, the sound of running feet, and then Talia's voice, barely a whisper. "Elijah, help me." The call cut out. He stood frozen for just 1 second. Only one. And then transformed into someone else. Elijah bolted to the small safe in the garage corner, unlocking it with his fingerprint. Inside, a Glock 19, a tactical knife, and a folded map marked with shortcuts around Brighton Hills. He didn't need to know the details. All he knew was that his wife had called in desperation, and his son was crying in fear. 12 minutes later, Elijah tore down the road in his beat-up Dodge Ram, running red lights like an ambulance, eyes fixed forward, grip on the wheels so tight his knuckles turned white. He didn't need an address. The GPS from the emergency call had shared Talia's last known location. This man had served in war zones, had survived ambushes, had been pinned down by enemy fire, but never had he felt so close to losing everything as he did now. And for the first time in years, he felt that old instinct, the one that once turned him into a ghost without a trace on the battlefield, surged back, fierce and terrifying. No one harms his family and walks away. The patrol car was parked along South Monroe, just a few blocks from the neighborhood. Its lights still spun in circles, but no one approached. The silence made pedestrians turn their heads, as if they sensed something wasn't right. Elijah Brooks stopped 2 blocks away. He didn't rush in. He backed his truck into a nearby alley, killed the engine, checked his weapon, and stepped out. Just a glance at the phone-mounted scope showed him the patrol vehicle, with 2 shadows moving around it. But he couldn't see Talia. He couldn't see Noah. Gripping his Glock tighter, Elijah moved like a shadow along the fence line, cutting across a backyard until he reached the right side of the patrol car. He pressed his ear to the metal wall. A faint thud, something hard striking the door from inside. A weak kick, then a gasp. He heard his son crying. The rage burned up to his temples. Then came a voice in the front of the vehicle, Brent Harlan's, harsh and mocking. "You think calling someone's gonna save you? Trust me, no one's coming out here." Elijah crept closer. His hand was already on the rear door handle, where Talia was being held. A second siren sounded in the distance. Dorsey turned toward the sound. Harlan drew his gun, facing the noise. Elijah didn't wait another second. He yanked the door open, pulling Talia out in one swift motion. She fell into his arms, still shaken, eyes wide. Before she could speak, Elijah kissed her forehead and whispered, "I'm here." Then he turned back. Dorsey, startled by the noise, spun around, but Elijah was already there, like he'd risen from the ground. A punch to the ribs bent Dorsey double, and a second to the neck knocked his weapon to the pavement. Harlan raised his gun, but Elijah spun, using Dorsey's body as a shield. The bullet flew, grazing his partner's shoulder. Elijah closed in, knocked the weapon from Harlan's hand, and landed a hook kick that sent him crashing down onto the hood. Talia rushed to Noah, still in handcuffs. The boy sobbed, trembling but conscious. Elijah unlocked the cuffs, knelt in front of his son, one hand on the boy's shoulder. "I'm here now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." From the distance, another siren wailed, this time the support units. The neighbors had called it in. Elijah looked at the 2 motionless officers, then turned to Talia. "We need to go. Now." She didn't ask. She just nodded. They left the flashing lights behind. But this time, that glow wasn't a symbol of safety. It was a sign of authority abused, defeated by a husband, a father, and a soldier who would not back down. The next morning, news exploded like a bomb across the local TV. Elijah Brooks' face filled the screen on every station with a red ticker beneath. "Armed man attacks police officers, now fleeing with family." Behind the anchor was a spliced video showing Elijah subduing Brent Harlan and Carl Dorsey. Missing were the clips of Talia in cuffs. Missing were the sounds of Noah screaming. Every trace of abuse erased. All that remained was the image of a black man assaulting 2 white officers under flashing lights. Talia sat silent in the wooden cabin on the edge of Whispering Pines Forest, eyes burning as she watched the broadcast. Noah had fallen asleep in her arms, wrists still bearing red marks from the cuffs. Elijah stood outside, checking the radio antenna and comms gear he once used in his special ops days. "We're not victims anymore," he said, stepping back inside. "From now on, we're the target." While they mapped escape routes, Elijah's satellite phone rang. He recognized the number. It belonged to someone he never thought would call again. Maya Sinclair, a civil rights advocate who had once battled the Brighton Hills administration over a similar case 3 years earlier. "I know you didn't do anything wrong," her voice rang clear. "And I know they're building a lie around this. You need to get your story out before they silence the truth." Talia looked at Elijah, her eyes flickering with hope. Maya sent the location of an independent journalist named Sasha Lee, the only one willing to broadcast content not pre-approved by the governor's office. But to reach her, they have to cross the city center, where checkpoints were already set up and Elijah's face flashed across every digital billboard. A new twist came when Jordan Wells, a young hacker Elijah once saved during his time in service, reached out unexpectedly. "I can wipe this from the system for 20 minutes. His voice crackled through the comms. "But you'll only get one shot. Once I open the door, you move. Slow means dead." Elijah checked his watch. 1:17 a.m. A light rain fell, the road slick, visibility low. Perfect conditions for a risky move. He packed in silence. Every motion was deliberate. He checked the Glock, loaded the mag, tucked the tactical knife into his pant leg, spread a city map across the worn table, red ink clearly marking every possible route. This wasn't just about escape anymore. This was about exposing the truth. Before leaving the cabin, Elijah turned to his wife and son. He bent down to hug Noah, placed a firm hand on Talia's shoulder. "No one decides who we are just because they wear a badge. And I swear I'll get our name back, whatever it takes." The rain still fell as Elijah's old pickup crawled down a muddy track deeper into whispering pines. Inside, Talia wrapped Noah tightly in a blanket, shielding him from the cold and the fear. Elijah didn't speak much. He focused on every bend in the road, scanning the rear-view mirror. No sign of a tail. Yet, they stopped at a secluded spot between 2 rows of old oak trees, a place Elijah once used as a recon post during reserve training. A small cabin, metal roof, fog windows, and a half-buried basement stocked with rations and survival gear. He cleared the entrance and waved Talia and Noah inside. As soon as the door locked behind them, Elijah sat at the wooden table, pulling out a waterproof laptop. From beneath the truck's control panel, he retrieved a hidden drive containing footage he'd extracted from the patrol car's camera port while subduing Dorsey. Elijah wasn't a hacker, but he knew how to get the right people to do the right job. Jordan Wells had walked him through decrypting files the police assumed were uncrackable. One by one, corrupted or clipped video files appeared. Then he found it, a longer segment, misfiled and nearly forgotten by the system. It showed Talia being slammed onto the hood. Noah dragged from the car, his cries sharp and raw through Brent Harlan's body cam mic. No warning, no commands, no explanation. Talia stood behind him, her hands gripping Elijah's shoulders as the video ended. Her fingers trembled with fury. "We're going to show the world," she whispered. Elijah nodded. But to do that, they needed more. Not just one clip, the whole structure. A chain of proof this wasn't isolated. It was systemic. He opened the digital map Jordan had sent, marking secondary data caches used by the Brighton Hills Police Department. Locations where camera backups and internal reports were stored off-grid, disguised in city infrastructure, lampposts, signal boxes, even beneath bus shelters. He zoomed in on a node near Highland Bridge, where Jordan confirmed a backup drive existed for Cruiser 12B, the car Harlan and Dorsey had used that day. "I need you to help me get out," Elijah said. "I can't go alone. And you're a witness." Talia looked at him without hesitation. Both of them knew. Every second they acted was a second they survived. And every step brought them closer to justice. Noah still slept, his eyes shut, but his small hand clung tightly to his mother's. Outside, the forest rain continued to fall, like a ticking clock counting down to the truth. The rain had just stopped when Elijah set the laptop on the cabin table. Satellite relay had been reactivated by Jordan through a remote booster, stable enough for a few minutes. Just enough. In the folder labeled EXT_CM12_4RAW. Elijah selected the full, unedited, 9-minute clip. No cuts, no annotations, just truth. He and Talia had agreed. If they wanted to be believed, they had to let the truth speak for itself. Talia stood behind him, her hand on his shoulder. "Are you ready?" Elijah asked, eyes fixed on the screen. She nodded. The upload began. The platform was an independent sharing site, immune to rapid takedowns by mainstream networks. Jordan simultaneously created mirrored backups on multiple servers. So even if one was removed, others would continue streaming. Less than 3 minutes after uploading, an anonymous user shared the link on X, the largest social platform in the country. The title said it all. No more silence. Brooks is the victim, not the criminal. The share count tripled every minute. The video spread like wildfire. Initial comments were skeptical, then outraged. Some couldn't believe their eyes when they saw Noah, only 9 years old, dragged from the car like a criminal. Others cried hearing Talia scream in desperation, falling silent as Elijah took down 2 officers to protect his wife and son. Independent news outlets quickly picked up the footage. Within an hour, the hashtag Justice for the Brooks climbed the national top 3. By morning, Sasha Lee's early broadcast aired the entire clip. Uncut, unfiltered. Just raw truth and the voice of justice. But virality cut both ways. While millions rallied behind the Brooks family and denounced the police, extremist groups were enraged by the image of a black veteran attacking officers. Anonymous accounts posted fake stories, doctored footage, and launched a fierce online war between 2 opposing narratives. Inside the cabin, Elijah turned off the screen and leaned back, face tight with tension. Talia sat beside him, eyes wet but resolute. Despite the division, they had reclaimed something vital: the right to be seen, to be heard, and to protect themselves. At the same time, under mounting media pressure, the state governor's office held a surprise press conference. Police Chief Marlon Greaves stood beside the state spokesperson, denying everything. He called the footage a manipulated edit, insisting the truth will be investigated internally. Elijah looked at Talia, voice steady. They won't back down easily, but now they have to play on our field. Deep in the forest, in the quiet of night, a small family had lit a spark capable of burning down a rotten system. 2 days after the video release, the Brooks family was officially added to the federal wanted list. Elijah's face appeared on every public display in Brighton Hills. Talia was accused of being an accomplice to assaulting law enforcement. Even Noah, only 9, was dragged into media storm as a trigger for psychological instability. Elijah didn't sit still. He knew that in war, when the enemy has superior firepower, you use strategy. You strike without exposing your position. You blind them, deafen them, confuse them. With Jordan Wells, he launched a small-scale counterintelligence campaign. Jordan set up dozens of fake accounts and mobile Wi-Fi stations throughout the suburbs. Every time they uploaded documents or released rebuttal clips, the IP bounced to a new location: an abandoned church, a defunct bus stop, even a closed-down car wash. Talia reached out to Maya Sinclair, the activist running a large independent podcast. They sent her internal police recordings retrieved from the department's hack network. In one recording, an officer named Redley said bluntly, "We don't need a reason with people like them. No one believes their word anyway." That Friday night, a special podcast titled "We Don't Need a Reason" aired. Within 4 hours, it surpassed 500,000 downloads and cracked the national political podcast top 5. Elijah knew each small strike was chipping away at the armor of a system long drunk on unchecked power. Then came the turning point. At 2 a.m. the next night, a special raid unit stormed Whispering Pines Forest, following an anonymous tip. But it was a trap. Elijah and Jordan had rigged infrared cameras around the old cabin, where the family had stayed 3 days earlier, and planted audio loops of Talia and Noah's voices. When the raid team burst in, they found only an empty cabin, a cold pot of soup, and a broadcasting rig streaming the entire fake operation live. Elijah watched from afar, remote in hand, and allowed himself a rare smile. We just showed the whole country. They hunt the innocent at night. No warrants. No proof. Talia squeezed his hand. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were flipping the script. From a hidden bunker behind Sacred Grace Mission Church, where Father Miguel Alvarez secretly sheltered them, the family laid out their next move. Elijah placed 3 satellite phones, a new map, and an unreleased video on the table. He looked at Talia, voice calm but unwavering. It's time to take this public. But not just with evidence, with the full story. From the beginning, told by us. 3 days after the failed raid at Whispering Pines, a black, unmarked vehicle pulled up outside Sacred Grace Mission just before dawn. The man who stepped out wore no uniform, but the way he walked, confident, measured, cautious, told Elijah exactly who he was. Government. The man introduced himself in a flat, steady voice. My name is William Kessler, special envoy from Governor Annette Lowe's office. We'd like to invite you and your wife to a closed-door meeting. No press, no cameras, just a conversation. Elijah didn't answer right away. Talia glanced at him, eyes full of suspicion. This was what they had waited for, but also the most dangerous trap yet. Kessler continued, if you don't cooperate, the governor's office will escalate to a full statewide warrant and deploy National Guard units. We don't want that, but you're shaking the foundation of the entire system. He's already shaken it, Talia replied plainly. Finally, Elijah nodded. An hour later, they sat inside a government-issued armored SUV, uncuffed, but watched closely through the rear-view mirror. The meeting location was an old firefighter training facility on the edge of the city, long abandoned. Kessler had chosen it for its lack of signal, its obscurity, and the fact that only 3 people entered, himself, Elijah, and Talia. Inside a sparse meeting room, Governor Annette Lowe waited, flanked by Police Chief Marlon Greaves and a government attorney. Elijah and Talia walked in like people with nothing left to lose, because they truly had nothing left. Annette opened the meeting with a voice calm and carefully rehearsed. The state was in chaos. The media was divided. Citizens were protesting. Businesses were closing for fear of riots. We can't let this continue. Talia tilted her head. And who created the situation, Governor? Greaves sat up straight, but said nothing. Elijah stared directly at him, eyes like steel. We want you to stop publishing further information, the governor said. We will launch an internal investigation, suspend the 2 officers involved, and find a peaceful resolution. Talia scoffed. What does peaceful mean? That we stay quiet. You do some half-hearted review, and 6 months later, those 2 wear a badge again. Kessler interjected. We're willing to drop all charges, offer legal support, and ensure your family's safety. In exchange for silence. Elijah leaned back in his chair. He took a deep breath, not out of fear, but to weigh his words carefully. I don't need your protection. I've survived live fire zones. What I need is justice. Real justice. If you're willing to bring the entire system into the light, then I'll consider it. Greaves shot to his feet. Are you threatening the government? No, Elijah replied. I'm offering a way out for all of us. The room thickened with tension. Talia looked at her husband. His eyes no longer belonged to a soldier, but to a husband, a father, a man who no longer feared power. We don't want peace through silence, Elijah said. We want peace that means something. 3 days after closed-door meeting, as the morning sun crept over Brighton Hills municipal buildings, every major news outlet broke the story. All charges against Elijah and Talia Brooks have been dropped. Officers Brent Harlan and Carl Dorsey have been officially suspended and are facing multiple indictments, including assault, abuse of authority, and falsifying reports. The media was no longer silent. The videos, audio recordings, and documents Elijah and Jordan had collected now aired on national television. Undeniable. The nation watched Talia being pinned to the hood of a car, Noah dragged out like a suspect, and the officer's cold words hitting the public's trust like a slap to the face. Online forums flooded with one phrase: they weren't lying. A confirmation millions felt compelled to repeat. Talia stood on the steps of City Hall, holding the official notice of the dropped charges. Beside her stood Elijah, no body armor, no weapons, just an old brown jacket and a steady gaze. Noah stood between them, holding both their hands. Before them, a sea of people, a forest of cameras. Elijah didn't say much. He stepped to the microphone, his eyes calm but sharp. I'm not a hero. I'm just a husband protecting his wife, a father protecting his son. But if what I did is considered crime, then the real danger isn't me. It's the system that forced me to act. Talia followed, her voice full of emotion. Don't wait until someone bleeds to speak up. Speak while you still can, because justice doesn't begin in courtrooms. It begins with courage in every one of us. Applause broke out, then grew, a wave that wouldn't stop. But for the Brooks family, this wasn't a victory lap. It was a beginning. The real lesson wasn't a lawsuit, or the governor's ruling, or the downfall of 2 officers. It was in people, once again, daring to speak up, to believe that truth, when exposed, would find its way. Elijah squeezed Talia's hand. They were no longer running. And more than that, they had proven one thing. No power is greater than the voice of truth when it comes from love and righteousness. 1 month after the final hearing, the Brooks family returned to their home at 2629 Elmwood Drive. The overgrown lawn had been trimmed, the old wooden fence repainted, and the swing Noah used to spend hours on had been rehung beneath the great oak tree out front. Noah still had nightmares, but he no longer screamed in the night. He had started going back to school, not as a frightened child, but as a brave one, wrapped in a truth the whole world had heard. His teacher pulled Talia aside and said, Noah may be quieter than other children, but his eyes carry something few kids have, maturity born from pain. Elijah returned to work at a small auto repair shop on the outskirts of Brighton Hills. But he was no longer just an anonymous mechanic. People came to him for car repairs and stayed to hear him talk about justice, about what it means for a father to never surrender. Every car that left his hands didn't just run smoothly. It seemed to leave with a renewed faith in doing what's right. As for Talia, once a mother beaten and slandered, she had become one of the strongest voices in the movement for police reform. She appeared on television, spoke at panel discussions, universities, and even before the state legislature. She didn't shout. She didn't accuse. She simply told the truth, exactly as it happened, with the eyes of a survivor and the belief that truth isn't told for revenge, but to prevent repetition. At a speaking event at Norwood Community Hall, she ended her talk with a line that would later be printed on posters and shared across schools. Justice may come late. It may arrive after long nights of silence, after lies are shouted louder than the truth. But if you dare to stand, if you do not fall, it will come, because justice doesn't need weapons. It only needs courage. The room rose in applause. But for Talia, the most emotional moment came when she returned to her seat, and Noah wrapped his arms tightly around her and whispered, "You're my superhero, Mom." No glowing spotlight, no shiny armor, just a mother, a father, a child, and a story they refused to let anyone else write for them. That story changed a community, and maybe one day it will change a country.